You are listening to Ender 217. This one goes out to Thunderfoot. I'm really upset that I didn't notice you sooner, because I think you're going to be providing me with a lot of really good material. This is, obviously, a reply to your Why Do People Laugh at Creationists? Part 1. You start off by criticizing a certain creationist for using the figure of 5 minutes for the formation of the Grand Canyon. You do this on the grounds that in order for water to travel from one end of the Grand Canyon to the other, it would have to be going 5 times the speed of sound. Now, you would be perfectly right if the water that formed the Grand Canyon had to start at one end and go all the way to the other to do it. This is about like finding a giant hole dug in your front yard one morning and assuming that it couldn't have possibly happened because it would have taken one man with a shovel days to do that. Now, I'm fairly certain that the figure of 5 minutes originally came as a hyperbole from Kent Hovind, but if we were both to be completely honest, we both know that whether or not it happened in 5 minutes, a few hours, or a few days, you're not debunking the creationist position. Personally, I think it was probably the tidal friction acting on huge amounts of sediments that had piled up there. The next section about water in the solar system is a pretty classic example of people hearing something and then repeating it incorrectly. Everyone knows that there's plenty of water in the solar system and the universe, but I'm assuming wherever this particular person got their facts from meant liquid water, since liquid water is essential for the function of life as we know it. And it just so happens that Earth, in our solar system, does contain all, or almost all, of the liquid water. Of course, this probably has to do with the fact that we are at a distance from the sun that is conducive to water in its liquid state, which brings us to the next issue of the habitable zone. You rightly pointed out that the Earth's orbit is elliptical and not circular. Obviously, this is true, but it only adds to the coincidental fact that our elliptical orbit lies entirely within the spherical habitable zone. And then you went on to talk about how the habitable zone of our solar system actually extends almost to Mars. And the point to be made here is simply that you're misusing the concept of the habitable zone. The habitable zone was a model developed to find planets that could possibly support life in other solar systems. We already know we are in our solar system's habitable zone. So the habitable zone is a maximum and minimum outside of which scientists conclude life could not possibly be supported on a planet. So you use this model of the habitable zone to ridicule the statement that if we were even a few percent closer to the sun or a few percent farther away, we would burn or freeze respectively. Now, the amount of heat that a planet receives from its star is inversely proportional to 4 pi its radius squared. You may recognize that equation. It's the surface area of a sphere, because the heat is being radiated out over a spherical area, and the farther out you go, the more area it has to spread itself over. Of course, if all you want to do is get a proportionality, then you can just use 1 over r squared, since all the other terms are going to cancel out when you create the ratio anyway. So a simple calculation shows that if you move the Earth 5% back from the sun, we're getting about 9.3% less energy, and that energy includes heat. You apply that reduction to the average temperature of the Earth today, which is primarily based on the heat that we get from the sun, and you come up with an average Earth temperature of about 9 degrees Fahrenheit. Congratulations. Now, if you go the other way, move the Earth 5% closer, you get about 10.8% more energy. You apply that to the average temperature of the Earth in Kelvin, because Kelvin is the SI unit of temperature, and you get an average Earth temperature of 112 degrees. That's almost the temperature of Death Valley on average. But maybe I'm being too hard on you. I'm sure that within the astronomical model of the habitable zone, it very well could be possible for the Earth to have some kind of life on it if it were at the outer or inner bounds of that zone. But it certainly would not be our life. Of course, you didn't stop there. You insinuated that the Earth could be moved back as much as 37% and still be able to support life. At 37% more distance from the Sun, the average temperature of the Earth would be negative 184 degrees. Now you might say, well, obviously your calculation is wrong because the temperature of Mars is only negative 81 degrees. But that's because Mars is intercepting a lot of radiation of types that we don't get here on the surface of Earth because our magnetosphere is protecting us from it. Obviously, there are a lot of stupid people on both sides of this issue. There are people who believe evolution that couldn't possibly defend it. There are people who believe creation that apparently can't. But I, for one, am more than able to do to you what you take so much pleasure in doing to so many others. Maybe you should try picking on someone your own size.